Hi, I'm Govindh Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode 345. And I have to tell you, some conversations you really look forward to, and some conversation you feel called into, and this one has been absolutely both. My guest today is Gabe Arnold. He's an entrepreneur, he's an author, deep thinker, and someone I consider not only a close friend, but one of the most thoughtful and insightful people I've ever met. Being in Gabe's presence is wealth itself. And as you listen today, you might begin to notice why. On his napkin, Gabe wrote just three words: face your work. And you might already feel something when you hear that because there's a part of you that already knows what your work is, not the business work, not just the emails, or the strategy, or the metrics, but the deeper work, the work that you've been postponing or redefining or quietly circling. And what's fascinating is how how simple those three words are, how layered they can become once you begin to explore them. In this conversation, we move through time and language and intention and the very nature of reality itself. We talk about process being greater than the outcome and why your timing can never be someone else's, about how the words you may use may be shaping much more than you even realize. And you might start to notice that as you listen, certain things resonate more than others. And that's not accidental because wisdom doesn't all land at once. It reveals itself when you are ready to receive it. So as you listen to episode 345, I invite you to stay curious and notice what stands out. And maybe, just maybe, you would consider what this would mean to you and for you to face your work. Let's dive into my conversation with Gabe. Gabe Arnold, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm excited to have you here today. And excited actually isn't even the right word. I'm almost giddy. I was looking forward to this for so long. And I love seeing your smiling face here.
Yeah, thanks, man. I've been looking forward to it too. We've connected middle of last year, and this is a long overdue conversation. So I'm looking forward to what we're going to cover today too.
Yeah, you do something weird about podcasts with people that you want to get to know, and it's almost exactly the same thing that I do. And we were talking about it, right? Like that sometimes when we meet somebody that we really want to get to know better, we'll invite them onto our podcast so that we can have a focused conversation. Isn't that
Yeah,
weird? That's weird.
it probably is weird. I'm extremely introverted, and told myself years ago it's really hard to make money as an introvert if you're going to go all in on that. And so I live in a small town in the middle of nowhere that's like 10 years behind the rest of the world in a lot of senses. And when I moved back here years ago, I was like, I'm going to start a podcast because I want to talk to other cool humans and entrepreneurs. And it's how I've met some of my closest friends now, mutual friends we have, and it's my favorite. It's a very interesting space that actually I've talked to. I've shared this because at least for me, this is what I figured out is that this type of conversation is simulated shared experience, and it's real shared experience too. But when we talk about things we've been through in this container, it's like we were there together, and so it accelerates relationships. It's a really fascinating dynamic.
Yeah. So here's a for anybody listening, you're going to get a sense of how aligned I am with Gabe over this because and why I'm so drawn to you because you are absolutely intentional about everything. So it makes me really excited to share your napkin because I think there's a lot behind the three words that you wrote on it,
Yep.
right? And so you wrote three very simple words: face your work. Why did you share that with me?
Because that's the secret hiding in plain sight that I've avoided in the past, in different seasons of my life. But the reality is if we're willing to face our work, we can achieve anything we want to achieve. And if we're willing to face our work and really take that to heart, then we can unlock so much. And it's something my grandfather modeled for me. It's something inherent that's inside of me. And I actually learned, interestingly enough, which is a pattern in my life too, I learned that phrase from somebody that was giving me private instruction in a martial arts practice called Kempo. Turned out to be one of the most evil people I've ever met in my life, but it doesn't mean that them helping me like hear or coin that phrase wasn't valuable or helpful or beneficial. Um, and it's just simple. Like it's also very similar to a phrase that when my wife comes in and says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm doing the work." Just it's simple. And it's like if we're willing to show up and face our work, then we can win. And especially if we don't have attachment to like, oh, I need it done by this time, or I need to solve this now, or I need to heal this fast, or whatever the thing is. If we're unattached to the timing, but we're completely committed to, facing our work, doing the work every day, then everything else works out. I mean, I've never had a scenario where that doesn't work for me.
What do you mean by, and you already put down a lot that we can go through, but you said if you're unattached to the timing, what do you mean by that? Because I think that that leaves some room for interpretation. Like when you say timing, I don't think you're just talking about timing playing, you're talking about something else too.
Yeah. About a year ago, it's a great question. About a year ago, I went super, super deep in quantum physics and quantum computing. And I'm bringing this in intentionally because it'll make a lot more sense, I think. So, Einstein, in the least recent written history, from my understanding, was the first one that was able to uncover and prove to us, along with some other scientists did similar work, that time is emergent. And so we know that scientifically because we pass a light ray through a slit, it will pass as particles in one case. And then if we're observing it, we'll switch to uh, light waves.
Waves. Yeah, so it's the double slit experiment, right?
Yeah.
Where the same light is passed through, these double slits, and
Mhm.
they can appear as a wave, which is expected, and then you put something that's a passive observer, just a
Exactly.
pair of eyes watching it, and it switches to particles,
Yeah.
and this is fascinating.
Yeah. So that's just one of the many, many layers in our universe or cosmos that we live in. Alongside of like when you look at a massive planet out in the solar system, it bends time because it's bending gravity. Gravity and time are tied together. And I don't know enough to explain how that works. I just know from my understanding it's true. Um, but the reason that I bring that up is that time is something external and time only occurs inside of observation. And in the world that we live in, it doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur, business leader, homemaker, student, or employee somewhere, or you're just out wandering, um, in whatever part of your journey. And we all receive a massive amount of influx of messaging from people we know, from online, even from books we read that say this is the timing of what your path should look like. If it's weight loss, getting to seven figures, whatever it is that you want to achieve. And when we receive that information without a filter, without awareness, then we're putting on somebody else's glasses, and we are often telling ourselves that this is the timeline or this is the pace that something should take. The problem is that can never happen. It will never occur because that's somebody else's observation of a process. And the vast majority of the world will tell you this is the way, or they'll say things that can immediately flag you and say, oh, this person is not sophisticated or experienced, doesn't mean they're not well intentioned. And they'll say this is the only way. When we hear those types of statements, then we know that we're just receiving information from somebody that's not sophisticated, not experienced, in a very rare case, intentionally misleading us. But I think that's probably the 1% of the 1%. People are good at heart and want to do good in the world, and most vast majority of people want to help others. But when we hear messaging like that and we just pick up that pair of glasses, then our view, which is not how you communicate, but for the example, Govind would be like, if Govind says this is the 10 steps you have to do to achieve X result, and I just pick up your glasses, I have guaranteed my failure because I cannot experience life the exact same way you can. And time will not emerge for me the same way it does for you. Because even in this conversation, like we're having two completely different experiences.
Right. And
And
they're
so
both true.
and they're both completely true, which doesn't make mine wrong or right or not true, but it's not yours. Um, and so when I think about showing up and doing the work, facing my work, it's the continual regrounding and that I'm going to walk my path with intention. I'm going to bring in information. I'm going to ask for feedback. I'm going to gather all the resources I can. but I'm just going to keep facing my work, and then my timing will work out. And I know people, plenty of people, who's have years, if not decades, of derailment in their life because they have so many pairs of glasses on they can't see at all, and they're trying to walk somebody else's path. And so facing their work is a challenging thing to understand because they're not really in their path. They're not really following the way that, their life, their higher power, destiny, wherever you want to anchor that, is actually trying to guide them.
I think it's really powerful, and I love the powerful metaphor that you shared. I mean, there's so many that you shared there, but the idea of a pair of glasses. I mean, if you put on somebody else's glasses, you don't see the way they see, and it can mess you up and give you a headache in some cases, right? So there's a lot there. One of the things I want to go back to is the fascination that I have with the double slit experiment beyond just the role of the observer is the fact that light is both a particle and a wave. Right? It has to be both things simultaneously if the experiment with the observation is to be true, which is contrary to what we are taught. It's all things are one thing. So in this case, the observation proves that it is both things simultaneously before the split and before the observation. And that also means that for us, we also have unlimited time and no time simultaneously, but we get to choose which one it is, right? And I know you're losing it. You're just laughing because this is the joy of the experiment to me.
Yeah. It's wild because the first time I was introduced to the concept of Einstein time was when I was working with a longtime friend who's a executive coach and time management coach, and just helps people really optimize and be present in their time. And she told me, she said, if you're sitting at your desk, and this was years ago, and my son was a lot younger, and your son comes in and he said he like cut himself or hurt himself. She said, "Do you have time for that?" And I'm like, "Of course I have time for that. That's my one of my primary jobs in life is to be a present and loving father and guide and help my kids." And so she said, "You immediately open space for that and you create time for that, right?" And I was, "Of course I do." And that was the first time that somebody said, "Oh, like the concept of Einstein time at a kind of fundamental level is that we open space and we create time for whatever we want." And yes, time is both non-existent and existent simultaneously. And there's something else I'll touch on there in a minute with light and time and everything, which is wild. Um, but we get to choose how we want to be present in each moment because it's our witnessing of it, it's our experience of it. And so you and I were in a call with another friend a few weeks ago, and you said something really awesome and profound because like I was in it, but I didn't notice this. Another one of our friends in like 3 minutes shared like a 30-minute in-depth philosophical understanding of life, and it was time slowed down because that guy, our friend John, knows how to expand time inside of words, and it was mind blowing to me. So
It was explosive. It was explosive.
it's so crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, but all that's to say, like we get to choose how we show up in each time and space, and how much we expand or compress space. Um, and I believe we do have the capacity to multitask or multi-thread or do things simultaneously if we want. Um, and we obviously have the ability to be fully present and fully aware. And there's a whole spectrum between those choices, and they're all good. They're especially effective when you are aware of them and you're intentionally choosing how you're showing up.
Well, I think that's isn't that sort of part of your wisdom? It's facing it. It's choosing what that is. And you wrote an entire book on the intentionality of essentially every word that we use. And you framed it as a marketing book based on your substantial marketing expertise. But it's not a marketing book. It's a leadership book. It's a life book. Because really what you're talking about all the way through it is setting intention. What do you mean? Really? What do you mean to mean? And are you facing it dead on? Are you showing up with that intent in the front of what you're doing? And are you inadvertently sabotaging that with the words or default choices you're making without being intentional about
Yeah. Yeah. I'm super proud of that book. The Atomic Words, I think I started writing like 4 or 5 years ago, and I think it came out in 2022 or 23, something like that. And the whole launch was a whole learning experience and disaster, and then we relaunched it. So it was quite the journey, but the power that we have in our words is one of my good friends. It's called spelling for a reason.
Right.
Um, and you go back in most religious texts, and it will say very similar things to the beginning of the book of Genesis in the Bible, like you know the word was with God, the word was God, and the word was always there. And so um, you can find that in all spiritual texts too, and it's just really powerful when we understand that in our speaking clearly it's the first step of manifesting into this human experience what we are going to experience. And it's trippy. Like I could talk about communication in words forever because it's such a powerful thing that there's low awareness for. And that was my intention of the book, is because you're right. It's a leadership book. It's a communication book. It's a helpful book. And the longer it's out there, the more people tell me how much they enjoy it, which is a huge compliment. But my result I want people to have the tool set and the ability to communicate things that are empowering, impactful for them internally, and externally, and then really connect at a deeper level with intention with other people, because everything we have is relationships.
Everything. So if time occurs only through observation, and my observation obviously can't be necessarily a roadmap for you, why share any wisdom then? I think that's a question, right? So why listen to this podcast? Why read your book? Why do any of those things? Because I think that there's a subtle and piece of this
Mhm.
that we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah, so I will, as you know, and that we both do very effectively and lovingly for each other, I'll challenge what you just said and the words you used. So you said, why share anything? Why can't it be a roadmap for somebody else? I would improve and optimize the language and say, I don't think it's effective for people to copy and paste an exact formula from other people, because you are setting yourself up for failure. However, I can absolutely learn from your story, your journey, and how far down the path you are in life in general, but even more specifically, how far down the path are you in this specific practice or focus, or where you are putting time and attention. Because I have a tool that I share with my teams and clients and friends over the year called growth path awareness. And it's something I created a few years ago because I realized that I was in one of two modes very frequently: of I was either judging somebody else or comparing myself to them. And that's when we shift into that ineffective mindset and behavior of, oh, I need this formulaic thing. I need the exact 10 steps. I need to copy what Govind is doing. And that's how we fail. If I shift and move my perspective and go, oh, I want to have growth path awareness of, let's say, I want to improve or do more or have this vision of what I want to do in podcasting. I can go, oh, like I can look at somebody who has, 50 podcasts released and say they're 50 steps down the path in their growth path of being a podcaster. Or I can look at somebody that has a few hundred out and I can say, oh, they're down the path farther. So there's probably more nuggets and principles and truths that I can pick up from just witnessing their journey, and then decide things like, I notice Govind always starts his podcast this way. Cool. I like a piece of that. I'm going to model learn from that. Then he has, weird bald guests on. I don't like that. And I'm not going to pull that out of like the learning and the growth and experience, right? But then we're comparing distance on a path or reps on a path compared to saying this person's better or worse than me, because that's where comparison and judgment. We use this language that has a bunch of dogma and things that we don't really need. It's not effective to help us move forward or grow.
Yeah, and I love the alternate lens. So that's great. So with intention means a lot of things to a lot of different people, and you use the word regularly. How how do you set intention? When do you set intention, and what does that mean to you? Does anything ever happen during the day that you have to remind yourself to go back at cause and get back into attention?
Yeah, it's when I think about the word intention, the way I experience it is, I think I'm confident we all have a something to give and share, when we're here on earth. And so if we think about that just as like a song or a music or a message, if we think about it from like a musical standpoint, singing, playing an instrument, all of that, there's attention to the strings, there's attention to our vocal cords, right? Without that tension, then we can't produce or create or project or, share what we have to share. Um, and really just bring forward our true unique expression. And it's truly unique when we speak because, voice recognition can pick up if it's you or me very easily. Like there's a completely unique tonality to the way I speak to anybody else on the planet. And so when we have that tension, but when we bring intention to it, then we're saying, okay, how do I want to use this energy, this life, this being, this existence that I have and express something of value for myself to grow and change for somebody else? And so that's kind of that's how I think about intention is like the power, the energy, the structure, the things I have, where do I direct those? Um, through expression. And then to touch on the second part you asked there, for me, I take time, um, either it depends on the season. I mean, I'm in a season now, like every evening I sit down and plan for the next day, and it helps me open space and create intention for being on this podcast, meeting with my finance team this morning, hanging out with my daughter and granddaughter this morning, hanging out with my son later. Like I've already created a space and like an awareness for that time. And throughout the day, when I find myself kind of amped up or stressed or something's going on, I'm working on and growing and, just going, why am I feeling anxious? And where do I not have clarity about what my intention is here? Because I can find myself like in these positions where I'm all wound up. I'm not feeling great. It's the stress is in my body. And it will begin to translate into how I'm communicating if I don't bring awareness to it and shift it, where I'm like wound up about a result or an expectation or a timeline that I really didn't embody and isn't really about my path. And then I take some time and breathe. And if I can reset it right there, I will. And sometimes I have to say, like, this is kind of an off day. How am I going to show up differently tomorrow?
And that reset at the end of the day helps you do that.
Yeah, it gives me real time emotional processing. I journal a little bit, talk about where I was uncomfortable, which will help me go, oh, was I really intentional here? Or am I uncomfortable because I need to grow here? And it's good news I'm uncomfortable. So kind of just do a little bit of journaling, list out every, important thing that I want to do for the day. And it also gives me space to go, I don't really feel like doing that tomorrow and I'm not sure what the value is. And so I'm going to reach out and say, hey, I appreciate you wanting to talk to me or whatever, but it's just not the right time. It doesn't feel right. So it gives me space to move into a day with strategy and intention instead of just being reactive with everything.
Yeah, that's amazing. Um, Tell me, you're very intentional about how you communicate. You're very intentional about how you face the work. You're intentional about the relationships you have with your children, grandchildren, grandchild, and your wife. And all of those things seem really natural to you today.
Hmm.
Was it always that way to you or for
No,
you?
no. As a kid, I did kind of put a stake in the ground and say, I'm going to be the exact opposite of the way my parents are. So that was helpful to have really strong contrast. But I mean, it probably from my late teens through my late 20s, I didn't care what I said. It was all about me and what I needed to do. And I was reacting out of pain or fear or whatever it might be. And so I would just, you know, I was reacting to pretty much everything. And so um, it took some, true friends calling me out and sitting me down and saying, you said that, and that was stupid and foolish and hurtful. And so, if you're going to keep talking like that, then that's going to impact our friendship. It took my wife always consistently, showing up for me and saying what I said was hurtful or didn't make sense or what I didn't think about the other person's perspective on. Um, I've screwed it up a lot, so that's 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 helped me figure out the ways not to do it, which for me is one of the fastest paths to learn and grow is just process of elimination is a huge part of how I learn.
And I think that steps back to the same illustration you gave earlier on about you can pick up cues and clues from people who are looking at things differently than you.
Absolutely.
right? You just can't pick up the time
Yeah.
from that, right?
Yeah, it always has to be our time and our willingness, because if we're not willing, then we're playing the game as a different character and not truly as who we are. And then there's a shelf life to that. Like, we can go through the motions, but if we're not really embodying the work and facing our work, face your work, face our work, face my work, however, whatever is the relevant phrasing there, that's when we can expand time, contract time, adjust things. We can be wherever we want, but and part of our journey as humans is to play other characters and try all that stuff and see what works for us and which doesn't work for us.
That's right. One of the things to jump back to Einstein, because again, spoiler alert, we're both gigantic nerds, so we're gonna we're gonna do this a
Exactly.
lot. The Einstein's theory of relativity was a daydream in a classroom, right? He was daydreaming in a classroom, saw a dust beam or the sun cut through a dust beam, and he wondered that if a bicycle were riding on the light beam, would it be going any faster?
Yeah.
And that was the genesis of the theory of relativity, and that all things exist relative to something else. So time is relative to its environment, and speed is relative to its environment. And the illustration is of kids bouncing a ball in their hand as they drive by in a car. What speed are they bouncing the ball at?
Exactly.
It's not 100 kilometers. It's not 100 miles an hour. It's no no speed, because they're just bouncing the ball inside the car. So the vessel is really important. And in your illustrations, we are our vessel, and we can control the velocity of our vessel. And once we do that, we relatively are able to, with intention, set the tone to what's happening in our space.
Yeah. Environment is everything. And just to nerd out a little bit more, because you brought up what came up earlier for me is, what's fascinating about a beam of light is it's without time. And so the starlight that we see today, when we're looking up at the stars, is in the exact same moment in time for when that star exploded or blew up or whatever it did before. We can measure the time difference, and we can look at a lot of aspects, but the actual light beam we see is in the same moment that the star is. Whatever time distance we are measuring by light years is just a time distance, but it's still present at the same time, which is just so mind blowing to me.
Again, things are both things simultaneously, and that's this mind bend of quantum thinking. So let's put this to real life in a lot of ways. Not to say that light beams and stars aren't real;
Yeah.
they all are real. But how we can use this is things are true simultaneously.
Hmm.
Not It's not an either or game. It's not zero sum. It's yes and. And if we think of ourselves as being here and complete, right? Or here and successful, it changes everything about the way we work, how we face our work, how we are able to move forward. Because many times people impede their own progress with this constant narrative that is completely an illusion. It's completely make believe. And and we can believe something else instead, and it's just a choice, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where, like you're talking about environments, and bouncing the ball in the car is a great illustration, because if you don't know what environment you're in, then it's really chaotic. It's really challenging. Um, and you'll have some awareness or different levels of awareness of how much pain or pressure or chaos or whatever friction you're feeling. And lack of clarity comes from not understanding what time we're in or what time we're choosing. And so when it comes to all the different aspects of our life, we can create suffering by attaching to expectations that don't work well for us, may not be effective, or relatively easy to achieve in this in the space or time we're in. And like, pretty common thing that has been talked about over the years is, if you're at work thinking about your loved ones all the time, then work is going to be hard. If you're in time and space with your loved ones and you're thinking about work, then you're not really connected. And that's a choice. Like, we're not aware that it's a choice, or at least I wasn't aware it was a choice early on. But once you understand it's a choice, then you really do open each space with intention and say, I'm going to be here for this amount of time, or I'm going to be here until I feel that the time is closed. Um, and then you can be there, and you don't have to live out of these, unhelpful environments in your head, or perspectives that say, I should be checking my email while I'm sitting with my wife, or um, I should only watch TV and not be on my phone when I'm sitting alone. When for me, I get a lot of relaxation and recharge from putting a hockey game on, half watching it. Sometimes I'm writing, sometimes I'm coding, sometimes I'm scrolling social media. And I'm intentionally in that space, bringing all those things in instead of judging myself for saying I'm not focused enough to do one thing or the other.
Mhm. And I just, for everyone listening, I want you to really underline the fact that Gabe did speak of watching hockey
Yes.
as
Very.
being the epitome of relaxation.
It's the
Another
number
reason
one
why I
and
love you, man.
only sport I follow like a
Yeah.
complete maniac.
So so again, another reason why I love you. But the reality is, I align with that because so often when I'm by myself in the evening working,
Mhm.
I'll have a hockey game on. I'll have my laptop in front of me. I'll have my phone beside me, and I'll have one earbud in, listening to tunes, and not two because I need to be able to pick up the hockey game if it gets exciting,
Exactly.
right? So I need to go back and forth, but I'll have all of that happening, and I'll let my mind wander between those tasks, and I find that I'm very productive and very creative in that environment. And I used to have this dogma where it's one thing.
Mhm.
Only one thing. And I'm not effective unless I'm sitting at a chair and working this way or standing at my desk and working in a certain way, and I let go of that judgment, and a lot changed for me. Is there a natural evolution? I mean, you talked about this, so we have to experiment with these different versions of our meat suit as we go through this.
Mhm.
And especially as entrepreneurs, I think we're really hypercritical of ourselves as we go through this. We're so hypercritical of every little thing as being either and I mean hypercritical in the positive and the negative. We conflate meaning in the positive that we were the reason. This one thing I did out of a million things was the reason why I was successful. And also conversely, this one thing I did blew the whole thing up.
Mhm.
Right? Don't we do that?
Oh, man, yeah. I've spent a lot of the last year or 2, like, really bringing intention for myself of, like, going deep in my path and trusting that I know, and that what I choose is good for me. And it's good to hear that I'm not the only one that likes to hang out and relax that way. And I didn't think I was the only one, but it's fun to have that conversation because rewind, like, a year ago, and there was a lot of times to sit down and be creative and work. And I noticed that I had this belief, or this, somebody else's glasses, somebody else's perspective, that doing it that way, there was something negative about it or not right, and the words right and wrong are powerful words that we need to be very careful and intentional with, because they carry a lot more energy and meaning than we realize often. Um, but I would notice, like, I would spend a few nights working, relaxing, and working the way that I work best, but I would feel really burnout at the end of it. And then I was like, why am I feeling burnout? Like, what's going on here? And I had to break down the belief of that there's a certain way to do this or be creative or do the thing, even though I'm full on entrepreneur on the spectrum, have every mental gift and, thing that a lot of people label as deficiencies or challenges. They're all incredible gifts for me, like ADHD, dyslexia, all that stuff is a superpower. Um, and so I know that, but I still had pieces of other people's beliefs sitting around when I wasn't aware they were in my environment, in my head, and in that space with me. Then I could, work a few nights or have a busy week and do a lot of creative stuff and be really burnt out at the end. And I'm like, how am I burnt out doing what I love? And so I had to sit back and go, oh, it's because I came into those spaces knowing that that's what I needed to do. And I trusted myself and did it, but also bringing into the environment this belief that that's the wrong way to do it.
Mhm.
Um, and that kind of belief or self judgment or mindset or other people's perspectives is extremely damaging to our whole being. physically, emotionally, spiritually, because we just drag around all the stuff that has nothing to do with us. And the more that I continue to heal and release and get rid of all of those beliefs that don't serve me well and aren't effective and aren't me, the more I'm just in flow and I find deeper levels of inspiration and motivation and drive, like deeper levels of energy, which is pretty shocking to me to say because I have infinite amounts of energy and positivity and drive all the time. But there's more, which is a pretty cool discovery. So for me, and just to share with everybody listening, if you go through something and something feels off or you feel drained, but it's something that if you sit with yourself and you're like, I do like doing that, then just ask yourself, am I trying to do it somebody else's way? What is my way? And experiment. Because for me, I don't know if I could add into the mix listening to music with one AirPod in. That might be too much for me. But I can experiment with that and then just see what feels right. Because watching the game, writing or doing something and screwing around on my phone at the same time, I do that all the time and have a conversation here and there if it's just something quick, for somebody walking through. Um, but just for listen, just play with what you love and find the things and times where it makes a lot of sense to be single focused or really, focus in the environment and find the things that you just find you're stimulating, you love and enjoy, where you're putting all the inputs into your environment that work for you.
Yeah. You, um, you talked about the meaning of the words right and I like this before we go to that, you said something that I think is really important, and you talked about it. It may not be the thing, it might be the sequence. It might be the order in which you're putting the things leading up to the thing, and give yourself leave to experiment with the order and make it your own, whatever that happens to be. And in this case, you use the illustration of the AirPod, but it could be literally anything. It could be, you know, it could be the order in which you eat your food off your plate, whatever it is. And I'm a sequential eater. I eat one thing and then I eat the next thing and then I eat the next thing and I'm dogmatic about it. And it drives some of my friends absolutely lunatic, like crazy. And I
Very
remember what
orderly. I can relate. I do a lot of that.
well, we got a similar autism. So
Yeah.
it's very, very particular, and I always do the same thing. And I remember sitting down, my brother was there as well, and the two of us were starting to eat our meal, and a friend of ours was there, a friend of mine that I've known at 20 years was there, and he says, "My God, you're not gonna eat your food in sequence just like him, are you?" And it's, "Of course I am. What are you like, what are you talking about?"
Yeah.
But so it very often is the sequence. It's not the thing. It's the order in which you put things or the slight variables around each one of them. But give yourself permission to experiment and make it your own is really what I think you're saying.
100% because structure and order and frameworks and routines and rituals calm us. And we are living in a chaotic existence. It's very chaotic. There's pieces of this experience in life that are way beyond our control or understanding, but we have the ability to create our world. And as entrepreneurs, I've said this to my wife from like the day I met her, it's my world. You just live in it. And I've never said that to somebody from a place of ego or being a jerk about it. But the reality is that you're just one of the characters in my world and my story. So why not create a world that I love, and create sequencing and orders and rituals that calm me, that I enjoy or excite me and get me moving. If I know that stuff, there's certain things like I very rarely, maybe like 2 or 3 times in a year, have like a slower day where I have low energy and like I'm just like feeling off. I have rituals where I like pick my energy up and shift and do different things because that's what I want. And what I want is good. And I use that word intentionally there, that it is good. But yeah, the sequencing of how we enter spaces, how we order things has a big impact on the outcome. And everything in nature shows us that order is significant.
I love how you chose the word good there, Gabe, because really many times we're afraid to believe intrinsically, extrinsically, but wholly that our heart is good and that
Yeah.
our intention is good, right? And I think it's I think sometimes getting to the place where people can believe that for themselves is hard. I mean, and there's a whole bunch of dogma around, no, your innermost thoughts are awful and they're evil and they need redemption. And I'm not getting religious. I'm just saying, no, you can believe that your heart is good. And there's a path there too, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the I don't know where I picked this up, because I would love to credit whoever shared this wisdom with me, but years ago, somebody explained to me shared with me, they're like, you know, you would like if one of your kids comes to you and is, made a mistake or did something or didn't work out as planned, you're not gonna be mean to them. Like, I know who you are as a dad, Gabe, and I know how you're gonna show up for them, and it helped me understand that I can parent myself. And so, my granddaughter was over today. She comes over every Wednesday, but a couple weeks ago when she was over, she was trying to share her milk or her orange juice or something with me or her mom, and she spilled it all over, which is not the outcome she wanted, and we had to clean it up. We don't leave that stuff like it was a mess. It was a mess. It was not what we wanted, and so, but was her intention bad? No, she was just being a kid, and she was trying to offer what she had to one of us. And if we give ourselves that same grace and realize my intentions were good, probably all along 99% of the time. And I've done some hurtful, poor intention, malicious things. Like I'm not proud of that stuff. But I mean, maybe on one hand, maybe two hands, I could count that stuff in, 40 some years of life. So I've always, in the grand scheme of things, always had a good intention. And I've done some really dumb things and really, really hurtful things with good intentions. But yeah, just like I just would encourage everybody, like think about when you're kids or think about, the niece or nephew or somebody in your life that like you really care about that young kid and you speak kindly to them. Like you help them, like you let them know, hey, it's okay. Let's clean this up together. Or let's work it through. Cause you're not going to judge them or be mean for them just being human. So why not give yourself that same grace and love?
Right. Right, and people have different riffs on that. They say, "Speak to yourself the way that you would speak to someone you love or speak to a friend," or if you had a friend going through the same situation as you, what would you say?
Hmm.
And, those are all helpful resets. The beauty of the child side is children are pure. I mean, they have great intentions. They just love, and,
And they
and
don't know any better, and they're ignorant, and it's not an insult. The truth is they're just ignorant of what life holds and the skills that are gonna need to acquire, and so I am ignorant of so many things, and I don't have all the skills that I'm gonna need when I'm 10 years down the road, and so I'm gonna be patient with myself and kind to myself and just acknowledge I did the best that I could with what I had, and I made some mistakes, and I had some wins, and it's all good.
yeah, yeah, that's powerful. So you also we also talked a little bit about the meaning and we're very so so Gabe and I are on a weekly call together with a truly incredible group of leaders. It was brought together by a mutual and very dear friend of ours, and we were called into the group at the same time, and that's how we met. And and in that group, uh, I see you do this every week with people. You're very intentional about the choice of words. Of course, atomic words are a big part of what you're saying, but we talked about the meaning of right and wrong, and you carefully chose using those words at the time that you did earlier on. Why are you careful about words like right and wrong, good or bad? How is that important, and why should we take note of that?
Those words in the modern society we live in have hundreds of years of dogma and information overload from other places. So they're actually embedded in our DNA. Because if we put 100 people in a CAT scan or the right medical equipment and we said those words to them, we would see the same areas of their brain and body light up because they're that embedded in our DNA. And they come from, in my experience and perspective, humans distorting spirituality. In whatever religion or practice you look at, when we get into the dogma of any religion, there's a lot of manipulation and control and fear and hurt that comes out of another person trying to tell me how to walk my spiritual path. And it's such an institutionalized thing in the world. Um, I'll just use one religion as an example because they're all like this when they get into, the dogma of another human telling me how to have my connection with my higher power. But if we look at Catholicism and as an example, which is one of the biggest religious institutions, the way that they use the words right and wrong and good and bad are directly and intrinsically tied to financial gain. That is the purpose of those words in the doctrine and the books and book that they promote. Because if I can convince you that you're bad and I can tie that psychologically into you will burn forever, then I can trigger a whole bunch of responses from you and get what I want from you and manipulate you.
Mhm.
That's how those words are embedded in society when they're not used with intention. Because the vast majority of you know modern developed countries have a significant religious dogma in their history, and so those are just words that if we're not aware of, then we're going to use them in a way that we trigger entire responses in our own nervous system, and in other people.
Yeah, and it's really powerful, and we talked about spelling, spelling, and for those people who are not picking up on the nuance, it's a spell, right? Words are a spell. They cast a spell. They have meaning, and I'm a I'm a disciple of NLP and other things, and words have very significant meaning, and in the way it's not so much what people say, it's the way they say it and the way they put the words together that is really important because we see the world as we are, not as it is. We walk around with a big projector on, and the world is our screen. And the moment that we realize that, we can turn off the projector and start to perceive. And if we turn off the projector and start to perceive, we realize there is no right and wrong. There is no good and bad. It is just the way it is. And it is happening for us if we allow that to happen. But that's a permission game. And we need to be in the mode of present moment perception to be there. And that is the whole piece. And I think it's so important now, and you talked about this earlier on, this chaotic world that we live in. It's maybe not that there was any more or less chaos in the world before today. It's just that we're inundated with every detail of it, every nuance of it at all times,
Yeah.
every moment. And it's impossible for any human person to walk outside the street today and unless they're incredibly disciplined and be completely isolated
Yeah.
from the energy of the world, the chaos of the world. So in that area of relativity, I mean, sure, you live in a remote town far away from everybody else. Uh, what are the things that you do when you are in community with people to maintain that focus, leave the projector off, stay in perception, stay in presence mode, because I know I've seen you do it and you are very good at it. So what do you do to stay there?
Yeah, I think the first thing that I'm actively working on and just trying to continue to have deepen my own awareness around is that before I enter a space with other people or myself of course too, but with other people, I bring awareness to like, is this a space where I need to have some intentional boundaries and protection, like energetically, mentally, physically, whatever it might be, and that's kind of like on one end of the spectrum, or on the other end of the spectrum, is this a space where I am choosing to show up completely transparent and open and vulnerable because I have empirical data that is safe and healthy for me to do that. Um, and years ago, I would just choose one of those extremes without any nuance in the middle, because there's nuance in the middle always. And then I would find myself like in situations where I was completely open, where people hurt me a lot, or I'd find myself in situations where I was had way too many boundaries and walls, and I was disconnected. So that's the first thing that I try to do is like, what is
And
this?
didn't you find that you'd get it wrong? I mean, for me, not proud of this, but for me, it would show up in weird places. Like I would be sitting around and I'd be not present. I'd have the wrong set of boundaries. I'd come in on like a rocket ship from work, coming home. My in-laws are there, and my mother-in-law is like the sweetest, most loving person on the planet, just pure love. And she'd be at the dining table and she'd ask me a question, and I'd answer it in a very direct and firm way, and she'd be devastated because I would have just bulldozed her completely.
Yeah, I've
And
done
I
that a
I
few
didn't
hundred.
even know I did it, to the point where she'd be upset, silent, not say another word, just embody it, and then my wife would come up and say, "What were you doing?" It's like, "What are you talking about? I didn't do anything." I have no idea what you're talking. Was I there? What?
Yeah, I've done that only a few hundred times or more. Um, yeah, I just I wasn't present with where I was or where I intended or wanted to be. Because like what I want is good. But if I can actually like connect in and see what I want, then to be honest, and this was not what I wanted. Like if today I woke up and I didn't want to do the podcast, I would reach out and say, "Hey, I don't want to do it today." I could explain why or not. That's my choice. And then I wouldn't show up here and not be present and super enjoying the conversation because if something that is a higher priority to me, like if my wife or my son or daughter had something come up unexpected today, you don't matter compared to them. And I know you understand that because you're the same way with your family. And then
Right.
I'd say, and then I would just communicate that openly with friends. I'd say like, hey, something came up. I can't be there. We'll do it another time. This apparently wasn't the time. But if I ignored something like that that did not happen today, and then I try to fit this in, this would be a waste of life. It'd be a waste of time. And I use this.
Wait a second. Let's just grab those words. What do you mean by a waste? Because I think people will say, "No, you would have been 80% of you," and there is doctrine out there that that says 80% is good enough.
Yeah,
You're saying it's a waste, and I completely agree with you, but I want us to talk about this because I think people just gloss that over.
I use this dogmatic language very intentionally and very rarely. And it is that for me, there's only one sin in the world, and it's wasting somebody's time. And the reason that I believe that strongly about it is because that's literally all we have. We can expand it, we can create it, we can ignore it, we can be present or not present for it, but it's all we got because it's our experience, it's what we're witnessing, and time emerges for us. And so if I show up and I don't show up fully present and I waste your time, you will never get this moment back. And that is horrifically awful that I would do that with awareness. I've wasted plenty of people's times unintentionally, but as I have more awareness and understand how I want to be present in this time and space, I am unwilling to waste other people's time or waste my time because I cannot get it back. And it is so frustrating, aggravating, such a negative, it's such negative motion, negative momentum to me that I will not be a part of that.
I love it. You're wearing a shirt that says "Process is greater than outcome," and it is completely unironic that somewhere around 12 years ago, I got a paper napkin, and the paper napkin had 2 words on it and a greater than symbol in between it. It was "Systems are greater than goals,"
Nice.
and that was from James Clear, who wrote the other atomic book,
Oh my
Atomic
God, I love
Habits.
that. Yep, that's
So
met with
so he
homage.
so this was not set up. This was not a law ball. This was completely natural. And I find I've been smiling about that since the beginning. And I just think it's a wonderful um it's a wonderful sign because all things are. If you're going to so look, uh, somewhere out there, there's a small business, early business entrepreneur that's listening to two seasoned entrepreneurs talk about energy and light beams and quantum thinking and mechanics and double slit experiments and the theory of relativity. And they're going, "Well, I thought this was a business podcast." And my answer to them is it is. It is because the way we think about things is true. So I think what you're reminding us is that we have the power to choose that on an atomic level and it impacts everything. W- What does your weekday life look like now after you've reinvented all of that, Gabe?
Yeah, one thing that's been helpful for me, and then I'll share what season I'm in now, is it was another person that I'll never associate again gave me this gift, but really helped me understand, like, shifting my language from saying, "This is the way I do things," to, like, "This is the season I'm in." We're both parents, and like the season with young kids is way different than, middle school kids, teenagers, adult kids. It's a totally different thing.
Totally
And
different
if
thing.
I try to be the same parent, that I was when my son was 7 or 8, or even when my daughter was 17, now it causes a lot of problems and friction. It won't work. It won't be effective. It'll be super challenging. Um, so bringing awareness to like what season am I in and what do I need in my life right now and what do I want in my life and what I'm willing to do and what I'm not willing to do. are good kind of starting points. The season I'm in now, I wake up pretty much whenever I feel like it because I'm working a lot on removing dogma around sleep and reminding myself that I know what I need and my body knows what I need, and that when I lay down to close my eyes and sleep, I'm just recharging. So when I'm recharged and I feel good, I wake up. So sometimes that's 4:30, sometimes it's 8 o'clock in the morning, and just whatever I feel like doing that day is good for me. And so I do that, and then I to have some time with my wife. Um, I'm in a season right now where I'm increasing the amount of like workouts and physical activity that I'm doing because I had a season before where I was like maniacal and super structured and had a lot of structure and routine with that. So I do some of that. Some mornings walk with friends or walk the treadmill or do whatever I feel like doing there. I drink a ton of water in the morning, like 24 ounces usually, and then more throughout the day. Then I will meditate or journal or do something, energetic or spiritual for myself for 2 minutes or an hour, whatever I want to do. And depending on when I woke up and how the day's flowing. And then I start my work day at 10 a.m. Uh, and over the years, for me, I found that I typically do most effective and I feel the best when I start my work later on in the morning because I was in a season where I had meetings at 9 a.m. and I woke up stressed out. And I'm like, why am I stressed out? It's because I have this meeting with somebody I love. It's nothing to do with that. And so I was like, I'm just done. I'm not doing meetings at 9 o'clock anymore. I'd rather hang out with my family or hang out by myself or just do something else. So I start work at 10. I work till 6 most days. Um, have dinner with family. Sometimes I go to bed with my wife. Sometimes I stay up and be creative. That's kind of a normal structure. So I don't know if that's what you're looking for, enough detail, but and then I build my whole work week in 4 days a week, and then Fridays, if I feel like working on something I do, or if we go out of town for a long weekend, where I hang out with other guys that I like. Compressing my work week to 4 days has been one of the most profitable things I've done. Every time I move back into that structure, everything flows and has a lot of ease for me. It's not for everybody's path. For me, it works really well. When I expand into 5 days, I end up putting like incremental load and strain. And then I get to the end of that season and go, oh yeah, when I go back to what I like, and I work 4 days a week. So, and I work and do whatever I want on Fridays. It's just like, it's my day my calendar says creative day off, which means I can do whatever I want.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that so if you're a starting out entrepreneur, if you're thinking about what to take away, is there are seasons and you can decide what design is right for you in that season. You don't have to pick up somebody else's routine because they say that the only way to crush through pain is to create more pain. You don't have to be that person. You can be the person that feels right for you. And if you feel right for you, that's one of the first things you can do in turning off that projector. Then you can start to see and experience the world as it is instead of as you are. And when we do that, we are our most creative, our most dynamic. And look, there isn't an entrepreneur in the world who's doing it because they don't want to ultimately help people achieve something, help people with an invention, help people do, feel, experience something. And if your intention is to help people and make a contribution to the world, whatever that happens to be, can't do that if you're not calm. You can't do that if you're not congruent, meaning that you say what you do what you say, and really mindfully mean your words. You can't do that without confidence. And confidence comes from a lot of structure. So, Gabe, you said this would happen, and the time has just flown by, and we could do this for a while longer. There is something that I do. The second thing that I do dogmatically with every episode is at the end of the episode, I pay forward a napkin that I got from John Ruhlin, which was "What you appreciate appreciates." And he passed away suddenly, as you may know, about a year ago, and it was shocking because he was so young. And as a tribute to that napkin and that intent, we paid forward that message of gratitude by asking every guest to shout out someone at the end of the episode. Who would you like to shout out today?
I want to shout out Alex Charfin for connecting us, and connecting me to so many amazing good things in my life, and for being a true man and a warrior, somebody who that is willing to go the distance and do the work to understand things at a level that few people on the planet understand them, so that he can simplify them and hand them back to all of us, with the power and the intention that he brings. He's an incredible human being.
I'm just gonna piggyback that shout out. I love that guy, and I love you. Thank you, Gabe.
Yeah, I love you too, Govan. Thank you. This has been amazing.
Gabe, that was amazing. As you sit with episode 345, you might begin to notice those 3 words, face your work, and feel a little differently now about them than they felt at the beginning. Because sometimes when something is simple, it's easy to underestimate it. And yet, the deeper you allow it to settle, the more you may realize how much is wrapped up inside of it. Today, with Gabe Arnold, we explored how process is greater than the outcome and how detaching from timing can unlock momentum when why your path is yours alone. So, how borrowing someone else's glasses and vision distorts your own, and the power of atomic words, how language shapes your internal and external reality, and why presence matters, and how wasting time is really about not showing up fully, how living in seasons rather than rigid systems allows you to design a life that actually fits and works for you. And maybe the most important thing, you don't have to fix everything all at once. You just have to face it. One piece, one moment, one conversation, one decision. Because when you face your work instead of avoiding it, rushing it, or judging it, something shifts. You move from reaction to intention, from pressure to presence, from projection to perception. And here's something to consider. What is the one piece of work you already know is yours? And what would change if you faced it calmly, confidently, and without attachment to timing? If this episode sparked something inside of you, I'd love for you to share it, subscribe, leave a review, but most importantly, share it with someone who needs it. And take a moment, grab a paper napkin and write down your takeaway. Post it, tag it, and use our hashtag, Paper Napkin Wisdom, because when you write something down, it becomes more real. And when you share it, it becomes contagious. Remember, your timing is yours. Your words matter, and your work is waiting for you. Until next time, face it and make it a great day.